Hello, my name's Aviva, and today I'm going to be reacting to some of your bookish hot takes. A hot take is basically just an unpopular opinion, something that you feel really strongly about but are in the minority for thinking that way. I recently asked all my Instagram followers to send me in some of their hot takes, and today I'm basically going to be reacting to them. So thank you so much everybody who did take the time to send something in, because without you guys I wouldn't have been able to make this video, and I am going to try to get through as many as I can, but I'm definitely not going to get to all of them. So I do apologize if I don't end up getting to yours, but basically I'm just going to keep going until I feel like this video ended up being too long. So let's not waste any more time and just jump straight into it. So first up, someone said, I think spice ratings for books are completely unnecessary. And happens to be, I have to completely agree with you on there, even though I sound a little bit hypocritical because I do put spice ratings on my own book reviews when I'm posting on Instagram. And that is mostly because if I don't put them there, then I'm just going to get flooded with DMs, and I really rather not do that. So in my head, I basically came up with like what every single level of a spice, like of my 1 to 5 spice rating is. And I just go off of that to like make everybody happy and like so nobody bothers me. But I do think that in general it is completely unnecessary for multiple reasons, and it's kind of just become like a mainstream thing when reviewing books, and I don't really think that it needs to be there. Like, I just want to know how much you enjoy the book. I don't think it really matters how much sex scenes were in the book to like, you know, make me want to read the book or not. I think that some books you could kind of just get the vibe off of if they're going to be steamier or not, and then like just let it be what you want to be. Like, do you need like a full layout of every single thing that happens in the book? No, I feel like you should just like read it and figure it out for yourself. I get it in theory that some people are looking for steamier books, or some people are trying to stay away from the steamy books. So in theory, it makes sense to me, but realistically, I feel like it just ends up making for a lot of like, you know, mixed thoughts and reviews and things like that, because like something might be a 2 to me and it might be a 5 to you, or it might be a 5 to you and it might be a 2 to me. And therefore it's very hard to like put a spice rating on there. And especially when you're looking through something like Book Talk and you're just coming across a random review of somebody that you don't really know their taste in books very well, and then all of a sudden they say like, oh my god, this is such a spicy book, then you might start thinking that that book is spicy, and then when you're going to read it, you might be underwhelmed or overwhelmed or things along those lines, and then you might review it and rate it based off of the previous reviews that you saw in the spice section. You're going to be like, oh well, the love hypothesis, everybody kept saying it was so steamy, but there was only that one half a chapter sex scene or whatever it was, and that is not steamy to me. And I agree with that, because I did see a lot of people say stuff like that of like, oh, the love hypothesis isn't steamy, and it's like, that is why I think that like, you know, spice ratings really shouldn't be a thing, because like everybody is looking at books in a different way, and I really don't think that it makes a difference what the spice rating is to like, you know, review your book or anything like that. So I do agree with you that, you know, spice ratings are completely unnecessary. I feel like I could sit here and talk about this for like 20 minutes straight, but I have to move on. So basically, I sound hypocritical, but I do agree. Anyway, next up, someone said a proposal and or babies in the epilogue is not necessary, and oh my god, I could not agree with you more. So the thing is I feel like right when I started reading romances, I really thought it was cute, like, you know, when every epilogue had like, you know, the proposal, or it's like the baby with the marriage and the cute house and the dog and everything along those lines. Like, I thought it was a cute way to end the story, but it really does get old very quickly once you start reading a lot of romances, and you know, you already get used to like the way that things are laid out, and then every single epilogue is just like happily married with a baby. Like, it just gets really boring, and I don't think that it really adds anything to the story, and it's kind of pointless. And that is why I definitely do agree with you on there. And what's funny is that I recently did read this book. I think it was On the Rocks by Candy Steiner, and that book had an epilogue that was so freaking good and was so not along the lines of this. It was such like, it fits so perfectly into the story, like the way that the romance and the relationship was built up, and then we got the epilogue and it was so open-ended and it made so much sense. It totally like brought the book home for me, and I'm like, this is what every epilogue should be. It should really like conclude the book in such a satisfying way, and you really don't need a baby and a marriage and a perfect house and everything along those lines to make a book have a happily ever after. So I really do appreciate when authors don't fall into the trap of giving you like that perfect happily ever after proposal, whatever it is, epilogue. I really do like when they do something a little bit different there, and that is why generally now I usually just like skim epilogues, because I find them to be really boring. But I am happy when I do randomly come across the few books that don't have these classic, very boring, you know, like everyday sort of epilogues, because I end up really appreciating them a lot more. So if you're going to write a book, make it an interesting epilogue, or don't bother wasting my time, basically. So yeah, with that said, let's move on. Someone said pregnancy trope is not bad. People just act like sheep. Pregnancy is natural in most relationships. So the thing is I agree with you on there. I do think that a lot of people follow the trends. Someone says that they hate something, someone else is gonna run and be like, oh yeah, I totally hate that too. I personally am not a fan of the accidental pregnancy trope, but I do think that that is different than the pregnancy trope. And I feel like you might be saying accidental pregnancy, even though you didn't put the word in there. So we're gonna pretend that you said accidental pregnancy and I'm going to react to that. So I'm not a fan of accidental pregnancies, mostly because the couple of accidental pregnancy books that I have read usually end up turning out to be, it's like at one point they're in a fight and then she finds out that she's pregnant and then that is the reason why they end up coming back together. And that is majorly why I don't like the accidental pregnancy book. I want to see these couples come back together or be together or stay together or whatever it is because they want to. I don't want the reason to be because they accidentally got pregnant and they didn't want the baby, but they're gonna have to deal with it anyway. And then the rest of the story ends up moving along those ways. I usually find that those are how those type of storylines end up playing out, and that is why I'm not a fan of it. I just want to see them wanting to be together because they want to be together. I don't want the reason to be because of a baby. So that is generally why I'm not a fan of it. And I do think that, the pregnancy trope can be done right sometimes. I'm not going to go and give details of how I think it can be done right. I think that there are certain circumstances where it doesn't have to work out that way, where it's they were in a fight and they get back together because of the baby thing that's coming along. But basically, I think that sometimes it could be done right, but the majority of times it's done how I just said it's done, and that is when and why I do not like it. So yeah, that is my take on that. But either way, someone else said sometimes the pregnancy trope ain't that bad, and I feel like I just answered that, but I will agree with you on there. Sometimes it is not bad. I just have not really found any books where it hasn't been bad. So maybe leave me some recs down below and I'll give them a shot. Either way, next up, someone said Throne of Glass over ACOTAR. So I happen to agree with you on there, and I do think that there are a lot of people who will agree with that as well, even though I do agree with the idea, the fact that ACOTAR is a little bit more popular. I feel like I do see that one around my feeds a little bit more than Throne of Glass. Maybe it's because it's still a continuation of a series, so people are a little bit more into it right now. But either way, I do feel like ACOTAR is the more popular one. I personally am a fan of Throne of Glass though, over ACOTAR, and I do think that there are a lot of people who will agree with you and me on this topic. So yeah, that is that. Anyway, next up, someone said, I don't care if you crack the spine. It shows that a book has been loved. And I happen to completely agree with this. It's funny because I used to be really anal about my books. Right when I started collecting books, I was very OCD about it. I'm not dog-earing my pages. I'm not cracking my spine. I'm going to read it tinily open just so that I don't ruin it at all. And it looks like I've never read it before because I want all my books to be in prestigious edition. And then over time, I basically let that go. And I realized you know what? I do want to show that a book has been loved. I do want to show that I've read it and I enjoyed it and it's been through the ringer a little bit. So this is something that has slowly grown on me over time. So I do understand the people who are still super anal about their books and want their collection to be absolutely perfect and in prestigious edition. But I also really do understand the people who want to batter up their books and make sure that you can tell that they absolutely loved it. So I see both sides of this. Anyway, next up, someone said annotating is annoying and actually takes away from the experience of reading. And I happen to very much agree with this, even though I'm not judging anybody who annotates, but I don't annotate for this reason, and that is mostly because I do think that it does take away from the experience of reading. I personally am very much a binger. I think that the quicker you read your book and the more invested you are in that moment, the better the book will actually be, and the more you'll be able to really judge it for the experience of what the book was supposed to be about. Because if you end up reading one book over the course of 2 weeks, you're gonna lose momentum, and that's why I am a really big binger. And I do think that it is important to do as little as you can do to stop taking yourself out of the story, if that makes sense. I don't know if I said that right, but hopefully you got what I mean. But either way, I do think that annotating books kind of does take you out of the story a little bit, because in my head, if I was going to annotate, I always feel I'd be okay, but should I highlight this, or is this important, or do I think that this is going to come up later and I should put a tab here right now? I feel I would end up over analyzing everything and overthinking everything, and it would definitely take me out of the story. And that is why I've decided to never really annotate my books, even though in theory I do understand the wanting for that you might want to do that. I do like the idea of oh, if maybe all of my favorite favorite quotes in my books were highlighted, I could just like quickly skim through it, and then like I don't really have to reread the book to find my favorite moments. The thing is I feel like people have taken annotation to like a next level, and I don't really like the idea of that. Like when I see somebody like post a book where it's like literally the entire thing is like filled with the tabs, I'm just like, what was the point of annotating? It's like, are you gonna go and skim through that again? Just reread the whole thing if you're gonna point out that many important moments, you know what I mean? So it's like, in theory, I like the idea of annotating. I think that it really makes for a very like special physical copy. Like if you're going to annotate your book, I feel like it makes it very unique and very yours. But I do think that people have taken it a little bit to the next level and have gone a little bit crazy with it. So yeah, that is my take on that. Next up, someone said Jennifer L. Armentrout books are poorly written and repetitive, and I'm going to have to agree with you on there. Even though the first time that I read the From Blood and Ash series, I actually thoroughly did enjoy it. But I think that the big reason why I did enjoy it at the time was because I binge read it and I didn't really feel the repetitiveness of it because I was reading it for the first time. I was learning everything for the first time, so I didn't really like catch on to how many times something was repeated because there was so much going on and I honestly like needed the refreshers. But when I did my reread, I realized how repetitive it was and the cycle of how she really like built up the world and everything like that. The whole idea of like, you know, Poppy thinking something and then asking questions and then getting answers and then finding out that those answers were actually false, then, you know, asking questions again and then getting different answers and then going through the cycle of like, you know, the way that she built up the world and the way that we found out all this information was extremely repetitive and also completely pointless because you can't change something like 3 times and think that we're going to be able to follow along without getting completely fed up. So I definitely do agree with this idea in general, even though the first time that I did read the From Blood and Ash series, I did weirdly enjoy it, but we're not going to talk about that because now I'm no longer a fan. But anyway, next up, someone said, if he really loved her, he wouldn't have needed a second chance in the first place. And I happen to completely agree with that. I'm not a fan of second chance romances. I don't really believe in second chance romances, mostly because, you know, if he loved her the first time, he wouldn't have done whatever he did to need the second chance. And yes, obviously every second chance romance has like a different scenario. And sometimes I might be able to enjoy them for what they are. But in general, I do like to stay away from second chances because more or less I do feel this way. Anyway, next up, someone said the Hating Game book was good. Then I watched the movie and it ruined the book. I completely agree with this. And I also, that's one reason why I always have to read the book before I watch the movie, because once I see things visually, I can't go backwards and then just like read the book for what it is. But Happens to Be specifically the Hating Game, I felt exactly the same way because I loved the Hating Game book when I read it. And then I was somewhat excited to see the adaptation for it, even though I knew that it would never be as good as the book because I'm never a fan of adaptations over actual books. But then when I saw it, it completely ruined the book for me. Like I'll never be able to like unsee what I saw. I really didn't like the fan casting of it, and just in general, I wasn't the hugest fan of the movie overall. And I definitely can't, go backwards and enjoy the book for what it was. Now that I have all of the like pictures in my head of like the movie and the way that the characters looked and acted and everything along those lines. So I definitely agree with you there. But anyway, let's do a couple more. This is not a hot take to this group, but I won't loan out books. I trust no one. I totally hear that. I don't think that's the hot take. I feel like a lot of people will definitely not want to lend out their books, including myself. Sometimes I'll give my books to like my siblings, but I never get them back quickly enough. So I really try to avoid it whenever I can because I really don't like knowing that like a book is missing off of my shelf. And also I do somewhat don't trust them because it's like they're not going to take care of the book the same way that I would take care of the book. You know what I mean? So anyway, next up, someone said, I hate reading novellas. I think they're a waste of time, but I can't not read it. And I happen to very much agree with you on there. I don't like the idea of novellas. I feel like they're always just a little bit too short for me. And especially when you are reading like a full series and then you get like a novella, what is it, like 100 pages in between the 2 books, like just a short story of something that took place. I feel like it's not really needed. And if it was needed, then it should have just been a part of the book. But I can never just like skip on it because I need to know everything. If I'm reading a series, I need to know every single thing that took place. So I feel like they are very much a waste of time. And if it was something that you wanted to write, then just write it into the book. I hate bonus scenes. I hate novellas. I just feel like if you're going to write something in a book, put it in the actual book or don't put it in there at all. That is my take on it. But anyway, let's do 2 more. So someone said second books in trilogies are just about always my favorite. And that is definitely a hot take. I feel like I do not see people saying that often at all. I feel like I don't even agree with this. Like I feel like usually the second books in trilogies specifically are always just like the bridge books. I always find them to be the most boring and like the least things happening. And it's just a way for like the author to get a trilogy out of it when sometimes it could feel like a duology. Like it's just some way to get from like the ending of book 1 to the beginning of book 3, which is going to be like the final point of the story. You know what I mean? So I do often not enjoy the second books in the story over like book 1 or book 3, but I do sometimes make exceptions. Like Akamath is the second book in a series, and that's one of my favorite books of all time. It's also my favorite book in the entire ACOTAR series. So I feel like even though that's the only one I could think of off the top of my head, there are some books where I do enjoy the second book in the story over like the first book or the third book or something like that. But in general, I don't think that like, you know, this is a very common occurrence where like the second book is way better. I do often think that they are very bridge booky and like over dramatized and drawn out and just a little bit boring. So yeah, that's my take on that. Let's do one more. So someone said, I hate when the main character of a book is also very much into books or loves books, unless it's their job. And I happen to very much agree with you on that. That's actually something that very much bugs me sometimes in books, when the author just like throws in a characteristic of like to one of the main characters that like they very much love books, or it's like you walk into the room and they just have like stacks of books, and it's just something to like, I see what authors are doing there to make you want to like relate to the character a little bit more, because obviously if you're reading their book, you love books, and that's something that will make you be able to like latch onto the character. But I do think that it is a bit of a cop-out unless it is something where it's like it's their job. Like if they're working in publishing or it's very much a part of the story, then I will definitely let it slide. Like I don't care when like characters are really into books, but if it's just something where it's like, it's kind of like, you know, a personality trait that's thrown into them of like, they always have a book in their bag. It's like, I see what you're trying to do there, and I don't necessarily like what you're doing. So yeah, I definitely agree with you on there, even though I feel like a lot of people do like seeing this in books for that reason of being able to relate to the character a little bit more. So anyway, that is about it. I'm going to stop here because I literally could sit here for hours and keep going, but I have to stop at some point. So I hope that you enjoyed hearing my reactions to your hot takes. If you have any other hot takes that you want me to answer, feel free to leave a comment down below and I'll try to continue on this conversation down there. But either way, if you enjoyed watching this video, then please give it a thumbs up, subscribe to my channel if you are not currently subscribed. And either way, thank you so much for watching this video because I really do appreciate it. And until next time, enjoy reading.